Okay, so today we're going to be looking at Lady Feeding the Cats. Now, this poem is a very visual poem and it really relies upon a lot of the visual images and what we imagine when we see the description within the poem. So, I do want to say that the poem is quite long, so I will move the poem up part way through as we're going through so you can match everything up. But there is a lot of detail, so there is emotive language, metaphor, colour, personification, onomatopoeia, and some similes in there as well. So this poem essentially is again an observation that gives us an image of an act of kindness. So the lady who is feeding the cats does this on a daily basis, and for her it is something of an act of kindness. This poem, to keep in with the Australian aspect, is set in Sydney. There is definite links to Moreton Bay fig trees and smoky gums and to the Domain, which link us directly to Sydney. What we also see is that in this poem, both the woman and the cats are marginalised. So they are looked at in a negative way by society, and that is depicted in some of the imagery of the two things. So what I would like you to be keeping an eye out for in the poem especially is the way that the woman is depicted in terms of how a normal observer may look at her. And then I want you to think about how Douglas Stewart presents her within the poem. The same goes for the cats. Now, these cats are stray cats. They are not domesticated in any way. So we do need to be thinking about how we might normally associate ourselves with a stray cat and how then they are depicted by Stewart as well. So basically there's a bit more of a structure to this poem. We have 4 stanzas, 8 lines and 6 lines, then 8 lines, then 6 lines. So it does have a little bit more structure, and there is also some elements in terms of rhyming patterns and things like that, which we will look at in class more so. So let's start off by looking at the beginning of the poem. So, shuffling along in her broken shoes from the slums, a blue-eyed lady showing the weather's stain, her long dress green and black like a pine in the rain, her bonnet much bedraggled. Daily she comes uphill past the Moreton Bays and the smoky gums, with a sack of bones on her back and a song in her brain, to feed those outlaws prowling about the Domain, those furtive she-cats and those villainous toms. So some really interesting emotive language. And remember, emotive language is getting us to feel, positively or negatively, or to feel some sense of emotion when reading that. And we can see instantly from this initial stanza is that we are meant to feel, empathetic, be looking a little bit, looking down towards this woman. She's shuffling, she's got broken shoes, she's from the slums, her bonnet is bedraggled, so we're not necessarily getting this, wonderful picture of her. And in the same way, we have these cats who are outlaws and they're villainous. So again, we need to be considering what is trying to be said about this woman and the cats. Then we continue on to when they meet. This woman is walking along, a sack of bones on her back. She's got a song in her brain, so she's humming along to herself. So she does look quite happy, and that is a bit of a positive image, but the way we see her is not necessarily that way. So we move on. Proudly they step to meet her. They march together with an arching of backs and waving of plumy tails, and smiles that swear they never would harm a feather. They rub at her legs for the bounty that never fails. They think she is a princess out of a tower. And so she is. She is trembling with love and power. So this is where we start to see that in actual fact, she's not really how we would picture her. And so as these cats move proudly towards her, they're arching their backs, which is a very typical way we would depict cats, and waving their plumy tails, so they're moving about in excitement, and smiles that swear they never would harm a feather. So when they're seeing her, they're looking quite pleasant. They're not those outlaws and villainous, although it's a very good disguise. They rub at her legs. So if you've ever, had a cat or known someone to have a cat, something they like to do is come up and they walk next to your legs, and it's part of them, sensing everything out, but it's showing that they are quite close. They think she is a princess out of a tower, and so she is. She is trembling with love and power. So we have this, then she's put up on this pedestal. So everyone else is looking at her shuffling along, she's bedraggled. Yet these cats, for them, she is this princess. She is someone that is really helping them and that they look up to. So we have that sense of this woman that typically would be seen by most people as someone that they don't really want to associate with and they will look down to. These cats, they look up to her. So we have that heightened position again that we've seen so much throughout his poetry. And we have this juxtaposition here of the love and power. So she's so loving towards these cats, but that also gives her a sense of power, which she doesn't have in any other circumstance because of the way she's depicted and her age. You know, the only way she has some sense of power is with these cats. And then we move on to a little bit of contrast here into the second part of the poem. So what we see is that the imagery here is helping us to understand this character a lot more. So meat, it is true, is meat and demands attention, but this is the sweetest moment that they know, whose courtship even is a hiss, a howl, and a blow. So this is where we start to really just see that this act of kindness has to do with something that's legitimate, so the food, okay? But what they know is that the sweetest moment is that interaction between the cats and the woman, okay? So that is the moment. So yes, they're being given this meat, but is this courtship, you know, the hiss, the howl, a blow, so that they're interacting with one another. At so much kindness pass in their comprehension, beggars and rogues who never deserved this pension. Some recollection of old punctilio draws in their eyes, and as she moves to go, they turn their battered heads in condescension. So this again, the idea of pension links to her age in the sense that she's spending her money to help these cats who, you know, essentially are beggars and rogues. You know, they're out trying to find whatever food they can, and they're rogues in a sense. They're against, you know, the typical domesticated cat. And what they notice is that, you know, when she's about to leave, you know, they get a bit off, you know, they're a bit put off by the fact. They're condescending, okay? And again, this brings in that quality of anthropomorphism, which Douglas Stewart has continued throughout a lot of his poems that contain animals. But what we can see is that as much as they appreciate her, you know, once that deed is done, once she's fed them and everything like that, there's a bit of a change. So we see the contrast moving. And then we have, she smiles and walks back lightly to the slums. If she had fed their bodies, they have fed more than the body in her. They purr like drums. So she's fed them, but for her there's this greater satisfaction. You know, they purr like drums. We have that simile that's telling us how excited they are. And again, if you know a cat, you've been around cats, you know, when they really purr, it means that they are content. Okay? Their tails are banners and fountains inside her head. So she even still is picturing what the cats look like. And that for her just makes her feel so good. You know, banners, fountains. They're all these, you know, images of, you know, satisfaction, beauty, excitement. And that's what she gets. And we get brought back to, you know, reality here. The times are hard for exiled aristocrats. So this is the sense that, you know, she's been exiled. She's not part of society. She's been separated and marginalised, and so have the cats. But at this moment, every day, there's some, you know, positive. You know, the times are hard, but gracious and sweet it is to be queen of the cats. So regardless of everything else that's going on, it is gracious, it is sweet, which are, you know, positive emotions, that she's queen of the cats. So again, she's put up on this pedestal. She's gone from, you know, a princess to now queen. So there's that development of the metaphor throughout the poem. So we have that extended metaphor of her being placed on this pedestal, seen to be this, you know, better. Okay? Everyone else, you know, she's shuffling, she's bedraggled, but to the cats, she is the queen. And that really depicts that, you know, distinctive visual image where any other observer may look at her and not really see much at all. They might see a lady with cats. But Douglas Stewart is seeing her as, you know, this queen, this lady who is celebrated by the cats, appreciated by the cats. And that's not necessarily how she is, appreciated or felt in society. And so we'll continue looking at that more in class, but you really need to pick up those images and the way that the cats are described, the woman is described, and how there's that contrast between how she's perceived by the cats, how she perceives herself, and how the cats and her are perceived by society around her.